This is your not-so-critical update for Saturday, July 3rd. Today, the US finally admits the truth about UFOs. Revil strikes again, Kaseya is hacked. And LinkedIn leaks data on 700 million users. And now your hosts, Mike Sutton and Peter Lowe.
Never get old.
I know. Love it. It's a great way to start the show. High energy. Gets us started off right. This is us for our second episode.
Yeah. Brings me back to my early 20s. That's my clubbing days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Picture yourself out 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Rocking that.
Come on. Just getting started at 2 o'clock.
Oh man, not me. It's like 8:30 these
No?
days. I'm ready for bed.
Oh yeah, these days. I mean, no more late nights for me.
Yeah, it's bad. So our second week, we're still recording in advance, but have plans to start doing this live once we get some of our coordination issues nailed down.
Actually, I wanted to mention that it's a good thing I'm not a football person, because England are playing right now against someone. Ukraine. That's right. They're playing.
I also am not a football person, so I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, and it's a big deal, and I have been asked by so many people if I'm watching the Euro 2020, which is, I don't know why they're still calling it the Euro 2020, but anyway, and they're playing right now. So yeah, you're lucky I'm not a typical Brit. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to respond to that, but cool. I'm glad you're here with me.
I'm glad to be here.
Selfishly, I guess, but we'll have a good time. We have some articles today. Should we just jump in?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So I guess we'll start with just a quick update on an article that we actually talked about last week, which was Western Digital MyBook Live users waking up to their data just being gone. And at the time, there was no background on why it was happening. The advice was just unplug it from the internet so that it doesn't keep happening if it hasn't happened to you yet. And we're working on a solution. Turns out it was a remote code execution flaw that was discovered on version 3, I think I saw of the operating system for the MyBook Live device.
Yeah, my Cloud OS.
And they had announced that it was no longer going to be supported after, I think it was March 20th, but not everybody updated to the current version, partly because they would have lost some functionality that they had, and people don't like to update. But no longer supported, and there was a security hole.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do?
It's tragic, really. I mean, it's not supported. There's a security hole. What is it? What's going to happen when this is like fridges and other IoT devices in 5 years' time? It's a real shame. We covered it last week, but I will say again that it's kind of unforgivable that they let this happen.
It's got to be tough to manage, though. Like, I remember going through this with Windows XP as they were trying to end of life Windows XP, and they said, no, seriously, there's not going to be any more security updates. But people just wouldn't update, so they kept having to release updates and extend the deadline. I've got a Google phone, and I mean, I'm almost shocked to know that I've had the phone for close to 3 years, because there was a time where if you had a phone for a year, it was so outdated you almost had to upgrade it, but got to the point where they said they were going to stop pushing updates. So I mean, it's hard to say a manufacturer has to be on the hook for security updates forever, but on a device like this, where people are archiving their important data and pictures and all these things, like, you can't just have that vulnerability out there.
And it's a plug and play thing. It's something you plug into your network, and then you copy your photos on there. That's kind of it. It's like a fridge. It's a utility device. It's not an all-purpose phone or a operating system or something like that. I mean, underneath the hood, maybe it is, and maybe that's what's going on. But as far as the end consumer is concerned, it's basically the same kind of thing. I think that there should be something in the end of life plan that puts it into a state where it can't be, I don't know, cut it off from the internet or something, but don't leave it just vulnerable. I think that's
Yeah, and they did
terrible.
say in the article that if they were not web connected, there was, I don't know if they said no risk, but much lower risk. All the devices that had been affected were internet connected, and it doesn't have to be internet connected. And I think they said in the article that most people don't have it internet connected, so don't do that.
I find very skeptical about that. I think one of the reasons you would buy it is so that you can chuck it on the web and have it accessible everywhere.
Oh, really?
But I think so. I think that's how I would want to use it.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway,
I've got a device, but I just use it for my local backups and long-term archives. So, but I think I exposed last time that I've got an air conditioner and a light switch that are both internet connected, and
yeah, that's true.
I mean, who knows what somebody could do to my house if they got access to that? Turn the lights on and off, make it really cold in here.
We should have done a setup here where your lights kind of flickered in the background or something, and could it be like, yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe we'll talk about it with the privacy stuff later on. There's a Google story about the voice recognition and all that, so we might loop back to that. But that just a quick update on a something that we talked about last time. This I thought was interesting and maybe had a little bit of mixed feelings about. I mean, no, it's a clear vulnerability. So basically, the story says the researchers bought 60 or 80 Echo Dots used on eBay and were able to get information about the previous owner from them, even though they had been factory reset before they were shipped. Pretty straightforward. And it took a little bit of manipulation. They had to open it up and replace the controller card, but they got it to a state where they could ask questions about who they were and restaurants near them to identify who the previous owner was and approximately where they were, and even get access to their Amazon account. They couldn't directly get credit card information, but huge vulnerability here. I don't know, Peter, this seems right up your alley.
Yeah. Funnily enough, I have a slightly different opinion on this than you might expect, because this is it's a fairly big story because there's data left on devices that really shouldn't be there. But I think the lengths that they had to go to recover that data were quite involved, and it's not kind of like the standard data recovery. If that you can perform a factory reset and stuff kind of goes off it, and you have to go to lengths to recover any data from the bits that are left on the chips on the device. So the way I thought of it is kind of like, I don't know, buying a notepad and getting a pencil and sort of tracing over the dents in the paper just to see what someone else has been writing on it before that. Like it's you have to go out of your way to get that kind of information back. So I think it was a bit of a stretch to see it as like a major vulnerability. It shouldn't be the case, and especially from a really big company like Amazon. And now they know about it, I hope they'll do something. But yeah,
it takes special equipment. They did have to go through. There was a case where they could connect to known networks, so they would connect a device to a network, then swap components to be able to trick it into thinking they were on another network. And it's basically like an emergency data recovery process that you'd go through with hard drives. If a hard drive crashed, you have to send it off to be read by the expensive equipment to identify the bits and translate everything. But I mean, not great, right?
No, it's not. But okay, conversation I was having with my wife today about. So I was telling her about another story we're going to talk about, this ransomware thing with Kaseya. And she asked me, well, why aren't the government getting involved? Why aren't the authorities helping out with this more often? Why don't they protect the companies from stuff like this? And I said, well, it's kind of like picking a lock on someone's flat. If your apartment, if your place gets burgled, there's certain things you can do to protect yourself against it. So you can have better locks, or you can not leave your door open. You can get multiple locks. You can get CCTV installed. There's all sorts of different things. But if someone's determined enough and they have a big enough hammer, they can get through your door while you're not at home. And there's different things that also, in the end, though, there's ton of different ways you're going to be attacked, and there's a ton of different ways that you can try and protect yourself, but it just comes down to that level. And when so going back to this story, I feel like it's sort of a similar situation that, you know, you bought a device, and you've kind of done the factory reset, and then it's still got data on it. I don't know.
Yeah, and like you talk about education a lot with respect to privacy. Like, people don't know what their vulnerabilities are, therefore they, you know, that should be taken into account when we think about what the laws should be. In this case, so this is a device that had a ton of personal information, and your thought when you do a factory reset is that it's like emptying a safe. So I take everything out of my safe, and then I sell that safe. The next person who owns the safe doesn't have access to anything that was previously in it. It's just empty.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with electronics is there's a trace of all those things still on there, and it might not be easy to read. Maybe it takes specialized equipment, maybe it takes special training. But if you sell a computer, if you sell a hard drive, if you sell a phone, if you sell an Amazon Echo Dot, you've got to understand that anything that was on there, there's still a trace of it on there in most cases, unless you go to extreme measures to wipe that out.
Yeah.
So just be aware, I guess, is the bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's ultimately that's it.
But we'll move this up.
Yeah.
Because it's related. So here's a case where basically users found that Google was listening to them all the time and targeting ads based on it. And Google tried to have this suit dismissed by arguing that, do I still have it here?
This is hilarious. Their argument was, Google never promises that the assistant will activate only when plaintiffs intend it to.
Yeah, exactly.
We didn't say we weren't going to spy on you, so it's fine.
Right. You had no. You should have had no expectation of privacy. If you assumed that we weren't listening, that's on you.
We didn't say that there was a camera in there that only took naked photos. I mean, we never said that.
Yeah. We didn't tell you what happened. And my wife and I joke about it. Like, if we're talking about something in a living room, we'll like talk to the NSA on a phone. Like, they're probably actually listening. So who knows? Yeah. I know that I am bringing a camera and a microphone with a GPS device into my home. Like, that's part of the risk, right? Who is that on?
Yeah. Again, it's education and information. There's something you wouldn't expect, and it's unbelievable that they. I mean, it isn't unbelievable that they argued against this, is it? I mean, they have to, right? It's like the prosecutor in a case or the defender in a case where it's obvious that the guy did it. He still has to do his job and go through the motions of saying, well,
sure,
maybe he didn't. He was standing there with a knife and it was covered in blood, but maybe he just slipped or something.
And it opens them up to a very expensive liability, I imagine.
I think they just shouldn't have done this in the first place. Honestly, I didn't. What did they expect was going to happen? They just get away with it? I mean,
sure, why not?
Probably that is what they expected.
I mean, in the end, they'll likely have made more money than it will cost them in lawsuits. So net win, right? That's how capitalism works. Do everything you can to make money today.
That is true. And if you factor in the fines that you're going to have to pay, and you still make more money, then go for it, kind of thing. Don't be evil, my ass. Honestly, I mean,
at some point, maybe an engineer someplace could have thought, like, hey, maybe we don't need to eavesdrop on every conversation.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Didn't occur to anyone.
No.
Well, and I'll bring it up again. I've asked you about this a couple times. Have you yet watched Social Dilemma?
I'm sorry, no, I haven't. Still.
What is wrong with you?
I'm gonna make a sticky note just for you, and I'm gonna write it down right now.
I have never steered you wrong on a movie recommendation.
I think there's only one other movie recommendation you've given me, and it was good. Remind me what it was again, please.
I'd rather not.
Go on, please.
It was Dora the Explorer.
That's right.
the live action movie. It was really good.
It was quite good. But
which I watched with my probably at the time 19-year-old son, only because he used to watch the cartoon as a small child. But it was a really good movie, right?
it was pretty good, yeah. I have to say.
At any rate,
it was fun.
Social Dilemma. So what was interesting about Social Dilemma is that they kind of start. It's about these engineers who created this technology, saying we didn't really know what we were getting into, and by the time we realized it was too late. But now we know this is like terribly dangerous and something needs to be done about it, but it's taken a life of its own, so nobody knows what to do. Probably something like this falls in that category.
I think a lot of the problems that people are dealing with now, to do with privacy and to do with, you know, how to use technology and stuff, they're actually not so different from things that have had to be dealt with before. So a lot of the laws about personal privacy and anonymity and the right to, you know, your fundamental rights as a human being have already been established. They just haven't been applied to law, or there might be some like edge cases where it doesn't quite apply, or it's a bit difficult to interpret them. But they're not like new issues. It's just on a bigger scale, and the subtleties are new, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, the answer to what do we do about it is just turn it off. You know, stop doing this.
Yeah.
Same with right.
Yeah.
But people, consumers, like the benefits that they get from this being done in the background, even if they don't know about it. Yes, there are downsides, but it gets them the experience they want, and the companies make a ton of money from it. So yeah, the answer ultimately is just like, you know, turn it off. Easy answer. Except consumers aren't willing to give up the benefits, and companies aren't willing to give up the revenue. So everybody's trying to figure out like, okay, but what can we do about it other than that?
I think that here's an alternative answer for you. Inform people that what's going on, and show the companies that they can do it a different way and still get 90% of the benefit. Maybe I'm just naive, but hey.
Well, they weren't notified in the terms of service that this wasn't going to happen, Peter. I think that's what you're overlooking.
That's true. You know what? You know what? Yes, you're right. So, really,
and we talked about terms of service last time with the Discover thing. Like they tell us what we're agreeing to a lot of times, and we just sign it without reading. And
yeah, well, that's you know what a dark pattern is, right? I mean, that's just a really common way of. It's not really telling people. It's. I think that there's perhaps a bit more that they could have done to inform people.
Sure, but again, like, what do you're bringing a live microphone into your home and carrying it around with you 24/7, setting it next to your bed, keeping it in your pocket, setting it on your desk while you're at work all day. Like, what do you think is going to happen?
That it will just answer me. And
I guess, I don't know. Even for that, though, to be able to answer you, that means it has to be listening at all times, just in case you say something that you want it to respond to. So how can you assume that it's not going to be listening to stuff that you don't want it to respond to? Like, you might say,
because it only activates on these hot words on the OK Google or Hey Google.
But that's not true.
That's what the lawsuits.
It only responds on those hot words. It's listening at all. It's listening to everything you say to see if you're saying those hot words.
Oh, sure. Yeah, sure. But it should immediately discard everything that prior to that. I mean, that would be my expectation.
Functionally, yes. But it's listening to everything you say.
Okay.
If I've got a toddler in the next room, you know, I know that they can hear everything I say. I've got to watch what I say when they're around, even if I'm not talking directly to them.
Yes, they're another human, a little human, right? But it's a piece of technology. People don't expect technology to act like that.
I don't know.
I mean, maybe I do and you do, but I don't think the average person.
Well, wake up, erase your devices, understand that you're carrying a microphone around at all times. Be careful about what you say online.
I don't know. I'm curious whether if everybody really did understand what was going on, how we would adjust. Like, I think we would just leave devices behind whenever we wanted to have a actual private conversation, and start
should do that,
like having little private rooms or something, little
yeah.
rooms that like with Faraday cages and just
well, a case came up not too long ago. I don't remember the specifics, but they found out that the phone records of congressmen were being subpoenaed by the Justice Department here in the US, and everyone was freaking out. But they were freaking out because it was happening to congressmen. It happens, congresspeople. It happens to citizens all the time, and nobody freaks out. So instead of worrying about how do we protect congresspeople, maybe we worry about how to protect everyone and fix these surveillance systems instead of trying to have two sets of rules depending on your income level or role in the government.
Yeah,
that would be nice too. Okay, so we're maybe going to come back to this, but let's get to a big story that broke just yesterday.
Yes.
And it was broken by Huntress Labs on Reddit as it was happening in real time. They started seeing malicious activity, ransomware, encryption of user devices, and tracked it back to the Kaseya agent. And Kaseya is a very popular tool among managed services providers. Enterprises use it. It's a remote monitoring management tool. Is that RMM? Remote management
I think so.
monitoring. And it's used for patch management, for policy enforcement, for troubleshooting, for remote access, for IT support. Very valuable, useful tool. However, it is software that's installed on every computer. And in this case, hackers got access to it and compromised some of these systems.
Yeah, this is an interesting thing last night. When Mike and I were chatting earlier, I was saying that I've had a rough couple of days, and because I sort of messed up my elbow and ankle and stuff, and I wasn't really thinking 100% straight. And then 11 o'clock my time last night, I'm scrolling through Twitter and I see this Kaseya attack being mentioned by everybody. Kaseya, sorry. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. What people don't see at the beginning is because there was only something like 8 or I don't know, only a few people affected at the beginning directly, but they're MSPs and their job is to manage other people's networks. So there's actually hundreds and hundreds of people affected. And it was done, the timing was amazing as well. It was done just before the July 4th weekend. So everybody's kind of signed off for a long weekend and got in their RVs to go on holiday for the long time off. And I think that it's pretty big deal.
Yeah,
it was pretty sneaky the way it worked as well. It disguised itself as Windows Defender, so it was pretty good to say.
Yeah, late on a Friday, and like you said, for anybody who maybe doesn't know, managed services providers or IT services, IT guys who manage the networks of other businesses.
Right.
So in this case, Kaseya, I think in their official statement said that they have 38,000 customers, but their customers in many cases are IT service providers who then themselves have the business customers that they're actually protecting, and they're the people that have this agent on their networks. I think they said was it 40 or 80 of their 40, or it was, I want to say it was 40 of the Kaseya customers were affected by this, and it didn't affect people who are using Kaseya's cloud hosting service. It affected people who are using an on-premise server for management, and it affected about 40 of them. But then those 40 could have who knows how many clients, tens or hundreds. Did I see that they think it's about 200 businesses now that are affected? Or, I mean, that is probably just the beginning, because there's the businesses that haven't even seen it yet. They'll show up on Tuesday and find out what's going on.
And I think this is right. A horrible side effect of the fact that it's an MSP company that got targeted is that the MSP, like Kaseya, are responsible for backups. And one of the most common mitigations of a ransomware attack is just to restore from backup, which if your MSP has been compromised and they're responsible for your backups, isn't going to help that much. So it was, yeah, particularly bad.
Yeah, hopefully these
waiting to see the
MSPs
fallout from this.
have good backup schemes in place.
Fingers crossed. But if it's Kaseya
Vulnerable.
handling their backups, then what can they do? The whole point of using an MSP in the first place is so that you don't have to worry about all those different, fiddly bits. I mean, if you engaged in an MSP and then had to take care of your own backups, you're wasting money, right?
Yeah, and I'm trying to look at. So here's Kaseya's official statement, and they report that they have 36,000 customers who use the system, and 40 were affected worldwide. But again, these are IT providers who themselves have dozens, or in some cases hundreds of customers, depending on how big the MSP is. The one eye roll I have about this is just in the press coverage, because they keep referring to it as a tsunami of ransomware that hits hundreds of companies. It's terrible, but it could have been a lot worse. I don't know if this is where I would necessarily draw the line of a tsunami. I would say this is I don't know. And maybe this goes to your point about what people understand about these kinds of threats, but I would say ultimately they probably got off about as easy as they could have.
Yes, they did. It was noticed by someone else and they shut everything off very quickly. And I think that's one of the mistakes that REvil made, was that they went after too many people at the same time. If they'd been slower about it and only just ransomwared a few of the customers at a time, they would have been able to compromise a lot more people, I think. The fact that it was a big kind of a whole ton of people got attacked at the same time meant that meant that they were noticed very quickly and everything was shut off very quickly.
Yeah. And you shared this story about co-op.
Yeah. So this is sort of an interesting side effect. Go back to the to my wife was about this earlier. This is what we were talking about. I was explaining to her why I had to stop watching a movie and go over to my work laptop at 11:30 last night, and what was going on. And she's like, "Oh, why isn't it in the news?" And I said, "Well, maybe it will be. I'm not sure. We'll see how big it is." And it turns out that there is a story on the BBC about it, but it's only about some of the companies that got affected. So the Swedish co-op, it was 500 stores had to close because some software linked to them is affected, and they're not able to, sell products. And it's the end result of the real world impact of these kind of attacks that is interesting. There's nothing on the BBC about the fact that Kaseya themselves, well, I mean, it's mentioned in the article, but about it's the fact that the supermarkets are closed. And yeah.
Right. And for businesses who were shut down on Friday when this happened, who even knows? I mean, presumably their MSPs know if they were on top of things, but this is probably just the beginning of the story.
Yeah, I'm interested to see the fallout. I mean, the Sunburst thing, probably much bigger deal.
And was that the same group, REvil?
I wish you hadn't asked me that, because I'm not sure about the answer.
I think there was a connection. Maybe they were using the same. There was some connection. It might have been that they were using the same platform to execute the attack.
Maybe.
Should probably research this more before I bring it up on the show.
Yeah, it's one of those topics where I knew a lot about this at one point, and I just kind of shoved it out of my brain to make way for the next subject.
Well, it's like you shared with me that your friend said, how do you stay on top of all this stuff? You don't. You just do the best you can.
Yeah, there's just too much of everything to be an expert in it all. It's crazy. Yeah, I mean, how do you feel about this?
In what sense? How do you mean?
Do you think it was the consolidation of this under MSPs? Is that a bad thing? Do you you think it was anything spectacular? You said it wasn't a tsunami, but
yeah, it could have been way worse. So is it a risk specifically? Yeah, but that's how the world works, right? We have specialists who are consolidating services. You work with SaaS companies. I mean, it would be the same if something happened to Salesforce. They manage the contact management billing for millions of businesses. If they got hacked, all that data would be compromised. We'll have a story about LinkedIn. And anytime you hear about one of these hacks, it's because they've got information from so many people. Any service that a business relies on is susceptible to this. And you just hope those providers don't get themselves hacked. And unfortunately, that's what happened here. I think, I was an MSP. I did not use Kaseya.
I was going to ask.
But it's one of the top tools in the industry. I mean, at least was at that time. I think still is. Enterprises use it. So do you know that this is a risk, but you assume it's never going to happen, just like anything, right? So I think it is in the backups, and I don't know the specifics of the configuration, but your backup is always your last resort. I know it's the thing that customers never want to pay for.
Yeah.
Even if you're setting up software. And I used to actually have my customers sign a statement that said, I refuse the backup. I understand the risks. I do not want it, and I will not complain about it if something happens to my network that could have been restored from a backup. So never had to be used, luckily. But I did have good backups. I did have to use them from time to time, never for ransomware. I mean, the mess of having to clean that up, I almost can't even imagine.
Imagine if the ones that had good backups were using the MyBooks to back up.
But it's fundamentals, right? Like, you want multiple layers of protection. You want one risk. Sorry, go ahead.
Here's the point of the MSP, though, right? That you're supposed to pay the MSP to take care of that stuff for you. So they're supposed to take care of your backups. You could say the same thing about any other element that they take care of. Your I don't know, invoices, or your DNS security, or whatever. Like, if any of those bits fell down and you got compromised because of it, it's the same effect, and it's because you weren't doing it yourself. That's kind of what I was getting at. Like, is it better to do everything yourself? You were an MSP, like you were one of these people. Like,
no, I mean, it's never going to be better to do it yourself. You don't have the level of expertise that an IT guy who specializes in this has. I think one of the risks of a tool like Kaseya is that it does bundle so much. It provides it's got the antivirus, the patch management, the backup, all in a single tool. Now, it's not their tool in every case, and the backups likely aren't stored on site. They're likely stored in a different cloud service. I don't remember who they work with. It's now been several years, but that is one of the things. I don't know if I'd say that was the reason I didn't use Kaseya, but it definitely was one of my concerns. Is as a provider, I never wanted to use too many layers of protection from the same company. I would use independent antivirus, independent backup, independent DNS layer protection, firewalls, all from different vendors. And my assumption was, if I buy all my protection from one company and there's a threat, even though it's not the same team that developed that entire stack, like because it just felt like it increased the likelihood that as a company, something about their culture or their resources or just the way they think and have their development process could make it more likely that they would miss a specific vulnerability. So I liked multiple layers for multiple vendors.
Sensible.
Does it make even internal? So this is a tool that's used by not just MSPs, it's used by enterprises because it gives you a very convenient way to handle patch management, remote support, remote monitoring, to look for any performance issues. So even if you are doing it in-house, it's a tool that you could likely look at and consider using.
The problem is, if you start doing any part of that yourself, or using another, like even using different vendors for different elements of your IT setup, it's going to be more expensive and more of a hassle, and then it's kind of veering into doing it all yourself in a way. Not like literally doing your own backups and copying stuff yourself, but if you use 8 different vendors for 8 different parts, then it's kind of
But I think that's
what the convenience, right?
That's so for an MSP, it's less about convenience and more about leverage. if I have 8 tools from 8 vendors, but I can be an expert in those 8 tools, and all my clients are configured the exact same way, and I can manage all of them on those 8 tools the same way, that's incredibly valuable to me. Unless I'm doing it wrong for all of them.
You become the vector then. Like, you're the person that gets hacked.
Well, and that's what happened here. Yeah, it was these providers that used Kaseya that became the entryway into those networks. Absolutely.
I think you're right. It's about balance. It's about not relying on one thing too strongly, and have multiple layers of protection.
Yeah, I mean, you can only do so much. Well, even if you do it in house, most of these companies that work with a MSP like this probably are relatively small companies. So what I mean, how big is your IT staff going to be if you decide to do it in house?
Yeah, that's true.
So tough spot, certainly. I would hate to be one of these MSPs. I would hate to be Kaseya.
Oh yeah.
I would be furious if I was the client or if I was the MSP. No winners here. Like, this is a bad situation.
How do you feel about Kaseya's response and their how they've reacted to the situation? I've seen 2 very different opinions on this.
I mean, so what I've seen is the information that's in the Reddit post that Huntress Labs is keeping pretty well up to date, and then their official
they're doing a great job.
Yeah, Huntress is on top of it for sure. Yeah. And then Kaseya's official statement that they've been keeping pretty well updated. So I think their communication has been good. Right away, they came out and said, shut off your on-prem servers. They shut down the cloud servers. They figured out that the problem was with the on-prem servers, and they're keeping their own servers shut down. I think so far in terms of crisis management, from what I've seen, they probably handled it pretty well. I'm not a customer at this point, so I don't know what that experience is like. It doesn't address the remediation side of it now for these MSPs and for the companies that are stuck dealing with this ransomware attack now in real time. So probably 2 separate issues, Kaseya as a vector for this ransomware, and then dealing with the ransomware attack itself. So again, hopefully those MSPs had good backups in place, but there's going to be a lot of lawsuits coming out of this, I'm sure.
Yes. Yeah, that's very true.
No question about that.
Or just one giant class action.
Yeah. Companies are going to be suing MSPs. MSPs are going to be suing Kaseya. Like, there's this is, and it could have been so much worse if Kaseya's cloud server was affected and all those companies protected by those MSPs. I mean, you'd be talking hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of affected companies. These are, I mean,
I'm very curious to see what happens though, because I know with that, like with Sunburst, we saw that there was like lingering traces of that back months and months later.
Well, so, it's almost certainly worse than we know now.
Yes, yeah.
Because it happened last night, so there's not a lot of news out about it yet, and it happened late on a Friday, so certainly there are a bunch of companies who don't even yet know that it happened, or maybe are reading the news reports now thinking, hey, maybe I should check on that. So I think, probably Tuesday, when most of the US companies are going back to work, we're going to start to hear more about how widespread the impact of this really is.
Yeah. Wait and see. Like most things.
I do not envy any of these people.
Oh God! Sure. Can you imagine you got all planned to have a nice 3-day weekend out in by the seaside or something, and this happens? Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, it's bad enough as an MSP if somebody calls to say like, "Hey, I got infected," and you didn't know it, your stack didn't protect it. Like, everybody probably knows that sinking feeling in your stomach of like, "Oh my God, what did I do wrong?" Right? So just imagine your entire client base getting affected by something. And is ransomware the worst attack that you could, is ransomware the worst outcome cyber attack? I kind of feel like it is.
I think no. I'm sorry, but I think the MyBook thing, the total destruction, the kind of wanton script kiddie just deleting stuff, or there's what do they call it? The not double jeopardy, but the double ransomware,
Yeah.
where they threaten to expose your data if unless you pay.
Yeah. Or like infrastructure attacks, I guess. We've
Infrastructure, yeah, that's the next, like, kind of the real world impact.
So maybe trying to rank how bad they are or aren't is not really the relevant factor here.
Actually,
they all
there's probably
suck.
a mitre. Yeah, they all suck.
And Revil sucks.
They don't care though. Have you seen the ransom note?
They don't care.
They're like, we don't care about your data. Yep. This is just business. We want your money. 50 grand.
Yep. And conveniently gave them multiple ways to pay. So,
do you know one? Sorry, just quickly before we move on, there was one really interesting thing. They asked for the ransom in Monero, this cryptocurrency Monero, and someone pointed out that it's not a very easy currency to get hold of. So if you need to get like the amount of money that you need to pay this ransom, it's not that actually easy to buy it.
Yeah, that's
Have I lost desyncs over?
Yeah, it's one of us is having some network trouble here. Are we still connected? This will be fun for the podcast.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, this is the world we live in now. All right, so let's take a look at what. Oh, this will be fun. LinkedIn. Was this your article?
I've read a lot about this lately. This week, I think you suggested it, but
okay.
Yeah.
Like again, like whatever. Data's exposed every day. How often can we talk about it? Why is this an issue? I just feel desensitized to it. Like I get it, it's important, whatever, la 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 la. But it happens all the time.
You are going to change your tune when it's you personally that's affected, or your child, or something like this. Like it's very you're desensitized is the word. Like it's happened so often and so frequently and so on such a massive scale that we just kind of end up going la la la. It's whatever. It's kind of like,
how else can you think about it? Like, what are you gonna do?
What's that phrase? One person being murdered is a tragedy. A million people being murdered is war, just war. You know.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, but just on a massive scale.
Sure. And I was thinking about it this afternoon that, like, from a privacy standpoint, like if somebody, so like generally what I say, like, no, I have no expectation of privacy. Okay. So can somebody get my address? Yeah. Somebody can probably figure out where I live. Do I want them showing up at my house or calling me 20 times a day or sending me death threats? No, absolutely not. But is that privacy is the shield then against the behavior, the stalking, the threats? Like that's not a privacy issue. Privacy is the way that I try and defend against that. And I don't know.
I don't quite see it the same way, of course, but I think it's the unexpected outputs of not having privacy by default. So not having privacy as a fundamental right, where things are protected as just a matter of course. It's the pregnant girl who didn't know she was pregnant, or his dad found out that she was pregnant before she did, because Target sent her an ad for nappies or something. I forget the exact story.
Yeah.
It's the things that you didn't quite know about yourself that are revealed through, detailed analysis of you. It's the subtle manipulation that happens, and the targeted ads, and the medical issues that you had years ago that you'd forgotten about, that stop you getting insurance, or the higher prices that you get charged because you're overweight, or you've been looking at guns, so you get on the no-fly list. It's all these little things that are just unexpected, and they happen because data is leaked and shared and sold and resold, and the value of it isn't something that you think about or expect until it becomes a problem. And when it becomes a problem, then it's too late. And so that's why privacy should be a fundamental right. It is a fundamental right. It's just not enforced. So yeah, but I need to step off my soapbox there. But that's how I feel about it. You get desensitized to it, and we see these massive data leaks, and we think, oh, well, I don't care. The thing for me personally is I'm constantly reviewing the data that I know is being shared and leaked and given to other people. And when I want to be private, I specifically, I don't know, I don't write things down. Like, for example, my passwords. Some of my passwords, I use LastPass or the Chrome password sync feature. I think at some point it's inevitable that Chrome will get hacked and all those passwords will be leaked. And I don't put anything super sensitive in there. There's no credit card information there, and there's no, my bank password is not in there. I don't save that stuff because the risk is too high. But I'm really aware of that, and I'm constantly reviewing it. But other people just it should be, they shouldn't have to do that.
No, I tell LastPass everything about myself.
Yeah, right. Addresses,
If
phone
LastPass
numbers,
gets hacked,
credit
then
card.
I'm just screwed.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time. All these password managers,
Sure.
the same
Yeah.
kind of
No,
thing,
I hear you.
consolidation. And there have been some password managers. I think OnePass, or
Yeah.
I forget who it was, but it's happened, and it will happen again. That data is stored in Google somewhere, right? So there's a path from you to it, and
Yeah.
one day there'll be a security issue. When quantum computers come in and they're able to intercept HTTPS traffic, we're all.
I guess I just see it as inevitable.
Yes.
So is that like, does that make me a nihilist in this sense? I guess like that's just
I guess.
I mean,
that's
I've read
okay,
sci-fi.
though.
I know everything leads to a dystopian future. So
No,
bring it
you
on.
should read Ian M. Banks, The Culture. That's what you need. That's what you should. That's a much more mischievous future.
Oh, okay.
Godlike AIs.
I should check it out.
Yeah.
I think like I could be totally off base. Like I'm open to being wrong. I don't think I am, but but you know, we're doing this show, and I want to hear people. So we're doing this on YouTube right now. We're uploading the recording. We haven't really talked about like an audio version of the podcast version, but we'll probably do that. We want to get a live stream going, and build a little community around this. So, you know, subscribe to the channel, like the video if you're enjoying the content, participate in the comments, and we'll bring it in. Send us story recommendations, all that. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you've listened this far, then please do just say hi, and we'll say hi back, and you know, that's how a conversation starts.
Yeah, I mean, if you've listened this far, then thank you.
Yeah,
and welcome to the family. Oh, so we didn't really talk about what happened here. My understanding is it wasn't a hack. They basically just scraped the public profiles to aggregate all the information. So really what they exposed is 7 million records that people had already exposed anyway by the fact that they have a LinkedIn profile.
Well, yes, kind of. But one of the things I don't like about LinkedIn is that actually, I'm not sure if that's the case in here. Sorry, I'm going to take this. I probably shouldn't have started speaking, but I was going to talk about how they contact you to suggest other people that you should connect with, and it's by that person uploading their contact addresses. I don't think that's actually the case here. Yeah, no, it's just public stuff. Well, public, but
certainly a risk though. And to your earlier point, it's possibly even less about any individual data points as the aggregation of all the data points over time. And that was part of LinkedIn's response. I think, do I still have it here? Later on, they said, where was there? Oh, I skipped right past it. So some in here they had, we want to be clear that this is not a data breach. No private LinkedIn private LinkedIn member data was exposed. Our initial investigation has found that this data was scraped from LinkedIn and other various websites and includes the same data reported earlier this year in April 2021 scraping update. So denying that it was a hack, their API was not compromised, their database was not accessed, but it was just pulled
tried
from
to
there.
do this. They're trying to normalize scraping as something that's just, you know, it happens. Don't worry about it.
Do you
it's fine.
think it's not?
No, I don't think it's
really?
normal at all. It shouldn't be. Yeah, I don't think so. When you know, if it's the equivalent of walking down the road and getting everybody's names and their addresses from like looking at the post boxes, right? And then putting together a massive our phone book or address book, I guess.
You could do that.
But yeah, you could, but people don't, and they
Not
don't expect other
illegal.
people to. No, you're right.
Is it even unethical? Like, it's out there posted at the end of their street. You can drive by and see it. So why not do that? Does anybody want to be my neighbor? I'm I'll record all your conversations. You're always going to be under surveillance on my phone.
Yeah.
I have no problem with any of it.
You take a photo of them while they're on the pavement outside, on the sidewalk. But as soon as they're on the property, you wouldn't obviously take anything when they're on the private property. But as soon as, you know, any of those photos, that's fair game, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the aggregation of it that's the problem, though, right?
Well, yeah.
I don't know where the line is.
$5,000 he wanted for it, by the way.
I have
$5,000 he wanted for 700 million records.
Say that again?
$5,000 the guy wanted for the 700 million records. You know.
But you could just go look at those 700 million profiles yourself and write all the information down.
Yeah, right. I bet he has quite a few customers.
Do we have anything else?
Yeah, I remember one story I was looking at.
Yeah, what do you got? Was it in our rundown?
The UFOs.
Oh,
I love this. I love this.
Here we go. UFOs. So, go ahead.
Report released by the American government, the US government, officially giving their stance on the something like 144 sightings of UFOs, or UAPs as they call them, unidentified airborne something.
Unidentified aerial phenomena.
Aerial phenomena. There we go. That's because UFOs, you know, it's got baggage. Yeah, and they're basically like, that's it.
I thought that the bottom line of the article, essentially, yeah, exactly what you said. Just like, yep, they're unexplained.
Yeah, it's
we can do
the name, right? And there's like 5 different classifications of unidentified things, and one of them is like, it's brilliant. It's like where the stuff, the enemy, something classified, or we really just don't know.
Yeah. Let's see here. So it was
I love it so much.
Airborne clutter, like hobbyist drones. Natural atmospheric phenomena such as ice crystals.
The weather stuff, yeah.
Classified aircraft programs.
Right, so we're not going to tell you.
Right. Yeah, right. Foreign adversaries or other.
We don't know, and we don't know.
Right. Yeah. So my brother made a couple good arguments, I think. One is the two that made sense to me for people who see these unexplained things, like what makes them so unusual is a lot of times how they behave in the sky. They seem to be hovering, they seem to be maneuvering in ways that don't make sense. And the 2 points he made is, a lot of it could have to do with perspective. Something flying directly towards you or directly away from you could look like it's hovering. But the other that I thought was maybe even more compelling is that a lot of times we think in terms of manned aircraft, and unmanned aircraft are not subject to a lot of the same constraints. We have the technology with vector thrust and a lot of what I'm sure are experimental aircraft to have things change direction and velocity very quickly, to the extent that no human could survive. But if they're unmanned aircraft flying around out there in the sky, then they could be very easily explained, but classified, and we'd never know about it.
The objects or phenomena don't even have to survive themselves. It could, you know, just be a test run. They could be destroyed in the process. Here's an interesting thing that I saw. It was on Twitter, but and I was trying to find it before we started the podcast, but I couldn't. It was a few days ago, but it was a graph of a particular state and the number of reports of UFO in that state, and it was at the time of day that the the reports were made, and they were all. Well, not all, but like there was a big spike at around like 8 or 9 p.m. just after people have finished their dinner and had a few beers.
Yeah.
Just before they've gone to bed. So they're, it's really convenient that the aliens who are invading they're all coming, just as we're all kind of relaxing
during
in the
party
evening.
time. Sure.
Yeah.
The big drinking holidays, New Year's Eve, probably 4th of July spikes.
It's real coincidence. I mean,
but there's lots of reports by commercial airline pilots, for example, of things that they see in the sky. I think they said 17 close encounters or like near misses, close encounters. We just propagate the language around alien invasion.
By the way, I do not recommend searching Twitter for UFO reports, because it's unless it's. I was trying to find this graph that I saw the other day, and wow, there's some people with very strong convictions out there that I probably do not want to engage with.
It's okay. So what do you think? Do you think alien aircraft are entering our airspace?
I don't want to not answer the question, but I really don't care. I mean, until they kind of, I don't. I mean, until they kind of announce themselves and say, "Hey guys, it doesn't make any difference. They could be here or they could not. If they're not making themselves known, then it doesn't affect us, right?" Yeah. Hopefully they are. I really hope that we get to see some cool aliens at some point. And I think we probably, but as a species, I don't know if I would stop by.
Wow, just bad neighbors all around. So I don't think there are. I don't think aliens have visited Earth. And that's not to say that I don't think there is alien life anywhere in the universe. I just don't think they've been here. Like I just feel like we would know it.
Well, no, I totally disagree with that.
What? There's no privacy. Because you think somebody's protecting the aliens' privacy? If they come here, then they're under surveillance. We'll see. Somebody will see them. Especially now, there's so many private businesses watching space.
Some incredibly advanced life form that can cross the galaxy undetected, enter our atmosphere, and touch down on Earth. Right? If they're that advanced, do you think they can hide themselves well enough?
So it's like Star Trek going back in time. They just cloak the ship, get off with costumes on so we can't recognize them, blend in with society.
But grow new bodies. That's what they've done. They're hard like holograms. That's what they are.
I'm not buying it.
I mean, if they are here, I don't think that we would know.
I don't probably think the universe is quite that interesting.
Yeah, well, there's that the paradox of if there was someone to meet us, then they probably would have said hello by now. So
so that reminds me of what's it called? I should know. So I'm just gonna leave the story completely unresolved because I don't remember the details. But I think they said, "Wow, this is terrible." All right, I'm sorry I did this to everyone.
The Fermi paradox is a conflict between the argument that scale and probability seem to favor intelligent life being common in the universe, and the total lack of intelligent life having ever arisen anywhere other than Earth.
Yeah. Thank you for the save, Peter.
That's fine. I knew exactly. This is kind of what I was talking about.
Horribly mangled story that I started and couldn't finish.
Let's not turn this into a paranormal UFO podcast.
That's what we are now. UFO happy hour from here on out. Tell us your UFO stories in the comments.
No, don't. Please do not. I mean, I'd love some feedback, but just not that. No.
Not UFO stories. All right. Okay. Do you have anything to promote, Peter?
No, not today. Thank you.
No, not today.
No, not today.
What should people do to protect their privacy?
Stay informed. Stay educated. Keep learning.
Do the best you can. Watch this show.
Ask good questions. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So this was a lot of fun. We will get this uploaded to YouTube right away. I'd love to promise that next week we'll be live. I'm not 100% confident of that though, but we'll try to get an update out if that's going to be the case. Otherwise, we'll have another recording next week. Really enjoyed talking to you again today, Peter.
You too, Mike.
As
always.
4th of July weekend here in the U.S., so I'm going to go to a picnic tomorrow, have a nice day off on Monday, and then be back at it.
Lovely.
And we'll talk again next week.
All right, man.
All right. Thanks, Peter.
Good
Bye.
time. Bye.